All right, very often I'm confronted as a consultant with a solution that the client is presenting me. However, before I'm going to talk about the solution, I'm quite interested in what is the issue, what is the real issue. Because very often, if I'm not being asked to implement a certain solution of which the client thinks that it will help with the issue, I'm getting presented a so-called proxy problem. So I'm getting presented something that is not really the problem, it's just a proxy that is hiding the real issue, the real problem. So let's take a look how this is going to happen. How come that if we have a real issue, we suddenly end up with a solution for a so-called proxy problem? And that is something you should definitely avoid. So always make sure to get to the real issue, to get to the real problem. But before we can do that, we have to take a look at how is this going to transform from an issue to a proxy problem. So usually in an organization, people have an issue. They have a lot of issues, especially in the beginning when the issue arises for the first time. Whatever this type of issue is, it can lead to negative feelings. It can lead to some kind of a state anxiety. There is a difference between state anxiety and trait anxiety, and that would lead too far. But state anxiety basically is linked to a certain situation. So it might go away if the situation goes away. If it stays, if the anxiety persists, if negative feelings persist, there is a tendency that social systems pull up defenses. So the negative feelings trigger so-called social or ego defenses. What that is something that I'm going to cover in another video. That would be way too much for this short introduction, or let's say deep dive into the topic. So if defenses are being triggered, usually that is not aware to most people. They just do something, defense gets triggered, and they don't know what is happening. Maybe they are even unaware that this is just happening. And that is a problem because on the left side of the slide, you see the differentiation between consciousness and unconsciousness. And I tried to basically show that some aspects of the slide that we will see in the next couple of minutes are happening in the consciousness. So we see them, we realize that these things are happening. And that is quite good because then we can speak about them. We can try to tackle them. Everything that is in the unconscious is something that we probably don't realize that these things are happening. And that, of course, makes it very difficult to work with them and to resolve them if they are an issue. So if we pull up defenses unconsciously, they try to restore our psychological well-being, our emotional well-being. Sometimes it can happen that if negative feelings persist over a very long period of time, people simply get used to that. They get used to the annoying things. They get used to the mess where they are in, and they create something that is called habituation. And there is a huge risk that at a certain point, if you have constant pressure on your skin, you suddenly don't feel it anymore. And that can be quite good. For example, if you're wearing clothes, if you just put on a pair of trousers, you immediately feel that there is something on your skin. But over the course of the day, pretty soon, hopefully, you don't even realize that you're wearing something anymore. So you get used to it. In this case, that is very good. In the organizational case with issues, that can be pretty bad. Defenses and negative feelings very often also lead to resistance in the organization, resistance in individuals. And that is a bit more visible. Sometimes people consciously resist, but very often they are simply not on board. They don't like it, and then they do things that probably are not very good from the perspective of the change agent or of the leadership. And we will get back to leadership in a couple of minutes. So you're getting used to the situation is one thing. You start to resist negative feelings. You start to resist change if this is the perceived issue from your point of view. And the third thing that can happen are so-called screen memories. Screen memories basically cover up memories that you have. So they are layers that are being put onto something that you remember, but you don't remember it anymore because it might be too annoying. It might be too negative for you. So you cover it up with screen memories. And resistance also is a layer and a layer and a layer that is being put up onto the issue. So you get used to the issues and you start to cover it up. And all of that is supporting avoidance. And avoidance in organizational life very often shows up as organizational silence. Organizational silence also is a very broad topic, and I'm not able to cover it here, but basically no one gives feedback anymore. Employees don't give feedback to leaders anymore, and leaders avoid getting feedback from employees for various reasons. And one of the reasons is learned helplessness, which is a way of habituation. You just simply have realized that it doesn't change anything if you say something. Alongside of that, managerial incompetency is an undiscussable. You are not allowed to talk about incompetent or perceived incompetency of management. So there are a lot of projections on managers, and that's something that will be important later on. But so far, we avoid things, we cover up things, we distort things. And that is not just happening individually, it is also happening collectively. And collectively, we can create collective memories, collective screen memories. So as a group, we suddenly make up our own stories about our past. And there are some things that are supportive of that. And one is a term or an idea that is called mimetic engulfment. So we basically copy others. We are getting engulfed, we drown in a group of people, and we basically rapidly identify with other people. We rapidly identify with their emotions. Emotions can be contagious in a positive and negative way. And this mimetic engulfment is supporting the development of collective memories or collective screen memories. And you can imagine if we put a layer of resistance of memory on something that is done by an individual, so an individual is doing that, it is probably not as strong as if a whole group is doing that. So the resistance is reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. Another thing that is happening with mimetic engulfment, with copying others, is that suddenly you have the impression that things are getting fragmented, they're getting distorted. It can be good, mimetic engulfment can be good, collective memories can be good, because they create a sense of unity. But that comes at the cost of performance, of individual performance. So the real issue on the left side has become fragmented. It has become distorted, and we don't really see what's going on, but we know something is strange, something isn't right, because the real issue still is there. And that leads to some kind of remaining anxiety. You feel bad, you feel annoyed, something is going on. And you don't want to stand with this anxiety, you don't want to stand with this annoyance. You have pulled up all the resistance, you have tried to cover up everything, of course unconsciously. You have tried to do that with screen memories. You are avoiding things, but still the anxiety doesn't go away. So you don't like to have this anxiety inside of yourself, very broadly speaking. And what you do is you project it. You project your anxiety, for example, on the job situation in general. Something is going wrong, you don't know what is going wrong, you feel the pain, you want to get rid of this pain, so you try to project it onto something else, maybe even not just the job situation, maybe onto something that is more specific. And that is the reason why I often hear people saying, we have a problem with communication. There is a lack of communication, or there is a lack of leadership. Leadership is not very good. So the problems are being projected onto something, and maybe communication isn't the real problem. Maybe leadership or the lack thereof isn't the real problem. What has been established is a so-called fake problem. I mean, it's not really fake because people believe in it, and that makes it very, very real for them. And that makes it very, very problematic, because if people think something is very real, then try to convince them that it is just a fake problem. And that is an issue, of course, as a consultant, if you work in an organization. So the last thing, and I'm connecting the dots back to the intro when I said that the issue is becoming a proxy. Now we have a proxy problem. And the proxy problem for me is working a little bit like a VPN system, a virtual private network. And the idea of a VPN is that it is basically putting a barrier between you as an individual and the World Wide Web. So the World Wide Web doesn't see your IP address, for example, which is good for privacy reasons. And in this case, you as a consultant, you are in the World Wide Web, and the individual, your client, is shielding himself with the proxy problem. And they are presenting the proxy problem to you, and they expect you to deal with it. So the interesting question here would be, if you uncover that the issue is a proxy problem, why was this particular problem being chosen by the client to present it? That's another interesting thing. What is also happening, so now you are being stuck as a consultant with the proxy problem, and if you focus too much on it, you forget to tackle the real issue, which obviously can lead to a bad outcome in the consultancy process. What is also happening is somebody is made responsible to deal with the proxy problem, with the perceived problem. It can either be you as a consultant, but it can also be, and at the same time, it can be the direct authority, the direct leader. And again, the responsibility to deal with the proxy is being projected on someone. So if you are not there as a consultant, the next direct authority is the direct leader usually, and this person is asked directly or indirectly to fix things. Now, they can't fix it, of course, because they don't see the real issue. They are probably confused and they get annoyed if someone says, hey, communication is a problem here, and maybe it's not. But still, they feel something that the employees feel as well. They feel anxiety. And again, emotions can infect people. So if the group is anxious, there is quite a likelihood that the group can affect the leader, and vice versa. So if the leader is anxious, the leader can infect the team. So emotions are contagious. There's quite some interesting research on that as well. But if the leader is anxious, that leads to a couple of problems, because if they feel anxiety, it can happen that their IQ drops, that the focus is limited to a very short term, and that they become generally risk averse. At the same time, very often leaders are trained to fix things, and they get appreciated for fixing things. So that is what they do, and that is very often what they like. And sometimes they develop a so-called golden fantasy. They think if something happens, all the problems will go away. And that is very risky. If a leader has the golden fantasy, if he brings you in as a consultant and all the problems will disappear, imagine what kind of fantasies are being loaded onto your shoulders. So be aware of the golden fantasy. And sometimes I'm wondering if there is a golden fantasy, if a leader tells me and tries to ask me to support, if he or she tells me, look, we have a problem and we want to implement this or that. There is one case that I like to do with my students. It's called the new CRM system, which is available on the Case Center, for example. And they try to implement a CRM system. But the CRM system is just a proxy. It's just the idea. It's the solution. It's the illusion of a solution to tackle an issue. And of course, the solution does not match the issue. So if you do something, it is not necessarily true that you will solve the issue. And then there's the last thing. If I get presented one issue, it is rarely just one issue. Usually a system is, let's call it multi-morbid. There are a lot of things going on, and there are a lot of screen memories. There are a lot of proxy problems. And if those get fired at you, you are probably in trouble. And my attempt is usually, if people present me with a solution, or if they present me with a problem, I'm wondering, is this just a proxy that is covering up the real issue in the organization? And what I try to do is to uncover the real issue, which is dangerous because you are working with resistance, you are working against screen memories, and ultimately you are working against defenses, which can be problematic, because if you remove all these layers of resistance, if you remove all the defenses, then the negative feelings come up. And there is one thing that might happen if people feel bad because you have removed the defenses, because you have removed the screen memories, and because you are poking into the issues of the organization. They might make you responsible for it, and they might reject you because you are a traitor who is speaking about the elephant in the room. That is something, by the way, that I'm also covering in Organizational Silence, and how to break that, and how risky it is to break that. And that was a very brief video, some food for thought when it comes to issues and problems that are being presented and should be solved in organization. If you found that helpful, subscribe to the channel, and I hope that you will stay tuned.